Hello YouTube, Rational Egoist 90 here. I haven't made a video in a while, and since I last posted, several issues have been lighting up the news, and especially the atheist community, and they all seem to be related to Islam. Well, it just so happens that this is an issue I feel very strongly about, and also there are not a lot of people who I've heard who share views similar to mine. Right now, it appears as everyone either blindly defends Islam or thinks all Muslims are terrorists and that Islam should be legally restricted. I am in neither one of those camps, and so I thought it only appropriate to share my point of view in this debate. The first and most basic truth in this debate, that's true with all debates regarding religion, Islam included, is that religions are ideologies. They are a mere set of beliefs that include an ethical code, and that's all an ideology really is. This means that, like all ideologies, they should be judged on their merits, their rational merits, the rational merits of their moral code. People always act like religions are something special, and that, perversely, they deserve inherent respect from all people. In fact, in several European countries, right here in the West, they are largely protected from criticism by anti-blasphemy laws. In truth, the only thing that makes religions special is that they are based on faith, and that, if anything, should cause them to be inherently reviled, not inherently respected and tiptoed around. Even revolting non-religious ideologies like neo-Nazism at least attempt to provide some sort of rationale to what they believe, unlike religions, and yet we're all supposed to love and respect religion. Now's a great time to crack out a phrase I've said a million times and which you all will likely hear me say again and again and again because it is so goddamn important. You don't have the right to not be offended. In a civilized place, a person has a right to sovereignty over themselves and their property. Nothing more. This means, among other things, that they have an absolute right to express any and every opinion under the sun, no matter how offensive to anybody or everybody. Being offended is not a breach of anybody's rights. It doesn't attack your body. It doesn't damage your property. It merely runs contrary to your values. So damn what? A rational society means that the dissemination of ideas must be absolutely unrestricted, and the individual can sort it all out according to their best judgment. Anything else is backward barbarity, a state-imposed restriction on reason itself, and an attack on rational civilization. So viewed through this lens, Islam is indeed an absolute abomination and a threat to rational civilization. And I'm talking about mainstream Islam. Let me make it resoundingly clear that I do not believe all or most Muslims are terrorists, but that's beside the point. I hardly give a moment's thought to extremist terrorism when I think about how much I despise Islam. You see, Islam is an inherently theocratic religion. Whereas in Christianity, as bad as it is, theocracy is never outright supported by biblical text. The Quran makes it abundantly clear that the government must be based on Islamic law, and in fact in quite a lot of detail just how a state should be formed. This is the centerpiece of my absolute hatred for Islam. Laws based on moral principles of faith-based ideologies are the absolute antithesis of a rational, reasonable society, which ought to look to reason itself as the sole guide for the basis of law. Now, obviously not every Muslim supports theocracy and theonomy, but such an attitude that government and religious law cannot be separated is still the very dominant attitude in most places where Islam is the dominant religion. According to Freedom House's latest survey, for those of you who don't know, Freedom House is an organization that, among other things, publishes an annual survey called Freedom in the World. And I'm talking about the most basic kinds of freedom here. This isn't some libertarian front. This is the absolute most basic freedom that all in the West basically take for granted. Anyway, according to the latest survey, only 2 out of the 48 countries where the majority of the population is Muslim are free, according to its index, Mali and Indonesia, and 28 fall into the not free category. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of bitching about subjective definition of freedom, blah, blah, blah. Well, just take a look at the criteria. I posted a link in the crotch bar, and see if there's anything that you could possibly object to about it. Now, of course, not all those unfree nations are going to be unfree exclusively on account of Islamic law. That kind of thing can be found in individual country reports, also linked in the crotch the crotch bar. But certainly, anybody with a small amount of education knows that a great deal of Islamic countries, including many prominent ones such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, and Libya, are suffocatingly fascistic expressly as a result of their Islam-based governments. And while these are undemocratic governments, and a person could claim that the theocracy is a policy of the state, not the people, the truth is that people by and large tolerate and generally support this variety of government. It is truly common cultural belief that that state law means Sharia law. That really is the point here. Regardless of whatever their holy text may or may not say, or whatever, the real thing to watch is the ideas held by the predominant numbers in the religion, particularly in those places where that religion is in the majority. And as it stands in the world right now, it cannot be denied that the predominant Islamic attitude favors some level of theonomy. The exception is a minority and generally located outside majority Muslim countries, which one could surmise is merely by necessity, since supporting Islamic law in a place where Islam is not the majority is an inviable attitude. One wonders if that attitude would stay put if they gain the majority. Perhaps even more important than all this is that even though Muslims even those Muslims who do not expressly favor theonomy, they will almost surely allow their Muslim morality to indirectly affect their political attitude, perhaps subconsciously, leading still to a block of people supporting governmental law based on Islamic values, even if they don't directly support theocracy or Sharia per se. Even here in the U.S., as an example, a country with a long tradition of secularism and an inheritor of an even longer Western tradition of at least some degree of rationalism, a very large body of religious law exists, or law based on religious doctrines, Christian doctrines in this case. Decency laws, prostitution laws, suicide laws, pornography regulations, gambling laws, the anti-sodomy laws, which were only overturned a few years ago, laws attempting to define marriage, promotion of religious-inspired sexual and other values in school, and a slew of other laws, mostly regulating sexuality, are all attempts of this. And this is in a country with a long tradition of secularism, and a religion which is far less restrictive and far more liberalized than Islam. And that brings me to my next point, that in addition to being strongly theocratic and attached to a very strongly theocratic culture, Islam has an unbelievably oppressive code of behavior. It puts fundamentalist Christianity to shame, and unlike Christianity, the bulk of this restrictive code is actively observed by the lion's share of Muslims. This moral code exemplifies a lot of the same bullshit morals of Christianity, only augmented quite a bit, such as obedience, submission, self-denial, the setting aside of reason in favor of faith, being your brother's keeper, submitting your will to some alleged higher power, and denying your bodily pleasure. Also, like Christianity, Islam promotes a highly restrictive and, well, absurd code of sexuality. Whether technically supported by the Quran or not, institutionally it is enormously sexist and absolutely oppressive to women, and enormously authoritarian on many levels, from the family to the religious authorities. As always, there are exceptions, but this is certainly the predominant attitude in areas where Islam is the majority religion. I challenge anyone and everyone to demonstrate to me that this point, and my previous allegation that the lion's share of Muslims are theocrats, are false. At this point, I want to emphasize that I do not support Islam being illegal, its immigration being restricted, its peaceful practice being limited, monitored, or stopped in any way, assimilation being forced in any way, or the right of Islamic landowners to build whatever they want on their property, cough, mosque, cough. Using force to fight the dissemination of an ideology is the province of barbarians and tyrants. So what am I proposing? I merely hope to help foster an attitude. Nothing more, nothing less. An attitude that views Islam as what it is, an evil, vile ideology that is hostile to reason and liberty. Islam should be regarded with the same legal tolerance but cultural disdain that ideologies like fascism, neo-Nazism, and Marxism are subject to. In such an environment, Islam would be peacefully prevented from ever causing its abominable morality to infiltrate into law, while still maintaining the individual's absolute right to believe and express whatever their consciousness drives them to. That's all for this video. Peace, YouTube.